this is a guy I'm really intrigued by. Adam actually just mocked him to us in his latest mock draft, and I completely agree. It's Xavier Watts.
I did him last summer from 2023 because he had led the nation in interceptions, and then he's obviously a really good prospect. So he's kind of a multi-positional, multi-dimensional safety. He was asked to play a lot of roles in the Notre Dame defense. That's a positive as you transition him to the league. So to me, he's scheme diverse. My guess is most people would probably see him as a back end player, but he's a pretty aggressive guy. I mean, I think he can play if he had to. He can play in the box. They matched him up man to man on both tight ends and wide receivers at times. So I mean, Watts is a really good prospect. The player, you probably heard me say this before, Frank, and maybe the other people listening, if you do listen to me at times. I always say when I watch guys, I never finish watching a guy and then sit around for 20 minutes trying to figure out who he reminds me of. But sometimes it just hits me, and that's where I kind of think, oh, he kind of reminds me of. And normally the way I do that, it's the player when he was coming out of college, not when he was not after 4 or 5 years in the NFL. So the guy Xavier Watts kind of reminded me of when he came out of college was Xavier McKinney when he came out of Alabama.
Obviously, everybody has the top people that they think are going to go. I want you to give me a surprise.
I got a guy that I absolutely love on tape. I love Landon Jackson from Arkansas. 6'6", or close to 6'6". I guess he's 6'6", 264, long arms. Again, another guy I did last summer as well. Then I did him this year. I happened to see him against LSU earlier this week because I just wanted to see that because I wanted to see him against. I had watched him against multiple other teams, but I wanted to make sure I saw him against Will Campbell, and he had 4 or 5 pass rushes where he just ate up Will Campbell. Campbell couldn't block him. Again, this gets back to what I just said to Frank about the way guys pop into my head based on their college tape, not where they are in the league. And I think all you guys are smart enough to understand what I mean and not take this as, oh my God, you think he's that guy? You're out of your mind. He reminds me of Max Crosby when Crosby came out of college. Now, Crosby was a 4th-round pick. You got to remember that. If people thought Max Crosby was going to be what Max Crosby is now, he certainly wouldn't have been a 4th-round pick.
I think defensive tackle, obviously there's a ton of talent there.
Oh my God, it's nuts. It's absolutely nuts.
Who do you see in the tackle draft class this year that could be that type of player?
So the question is, what are they looking for in a tackle? There's different kinds of tackles. Are they looking for a pass rusher? Are they looking in a sense to replace Jordan Davis, who I don't believe they're going to sign to another contract? So the question becomes, what are they looking for? Because there's different kinds of tackles. That's true at any position. So we'll leave out like the main guys because they're not going to get. Walter Nolan could drop, even though I think he's phenomenal based on tape. I just heard from people, the coaches, they always say things to me like, well, through the underground, the word is this, because I don't ask those questions, but when coaches I know will tell me that kind of stuff. So now you get into probably guys like Derek Harmon from Oregon, who's a really intriguing player. He became a full-time player at Oregon this year after transferring from Michigan State. He's got a really good combination of power and strength and quickness. I think the best is yet to come with him. So, again, you never know with a guy like that who really became a full-time player for the first time, where he is as a rookie. Like, could he come in and play as a rookie, or would he have to sit and learn? I think a guy like Tyleik Williams from Ohio State is a really impressive guy. One of my absolute favorites, okay? I'll give you a guy who's one of my absolute favorites. And again, I don't know where these guys get drafted. That's not my thing. But I love Joshua Farmer from Florida State.
LSU.
Yeah, absolutely love this guy's game. 6'3 1/4, 305, 35-inch arms. I just, he's got really strong, heavy hands. He's got quick feet. I think he can burst both vertically and laterally off the ball. Dominant snaps where he even redirected and showed athleticism. This guy was one of my absolute favorite D tackle prospects.
I remember back in the day, you had Troy
Palomalu and Cam Chancellor and like the early Jamal Adams, where they're super aggressive and running toward the line and super active. Like, at what point does that aggression work against you in terms of length of career?
That's actually a great question because I think it plays into how the league has changed. Back then, and that wasn't that long ago, but back then a lot more teams played cover three. Okay. So you had a post safety and you had a box safety niche. If you think about the Legion of Boom, they had Earl Thomas playing on the back end and they had Cam Chancellor who basically played underneath. He played in the box or what we call an overhang position. He rarely ever played on the back end. So what happened is teams figured out how to attack cover three because of the Legion of Boom, every team started to play more and more cover three. And then because the league is cyclical on both sides of the ball, offenses figured out how to attack and break down cover three with their route concepts. So now not a lot of teams play as much cover three because it's a beatable coverage with route concepts because of the seams. You're giving up the seams for the most part. So now a lot more teams play out of a two high safety structure. So the nature of the safety position has changed. So now safeties, because of what we call quarters or cover four, which is the two high structure, safeties have to be able to do some more things. So guys who are just physical, aggressive guys, it's a struggle for, and Jamal Adams is a great example because he could never cover. And that's one reason why he's just, even though he had the great career at LSU and he was a high draft choice, he never really became a good player because he just was a liability in coverage. He couldn't really play any coverage. He just wasn't that guy. He was really a glorified linebacker. I mean, I remember having a conversation with Bill Polian a number of years ago, and Bill said he's a glorified weak side linebacker. I mean, that's essentially what someone like Jamal Adams was. So anyway, the nature of the safety position has changed. So you're not going to see guys who just play, let's say, down in the box. They have to be able to play on the back end, and they have to be able to cover, and they have to be able at times, not always, to play some man.
In your talks with like people around the league, how are they viewing, the transfers, the guys who have, 5 schools in 5 years?
In my conversations, I can't speak for the conversations Adam has had, but normally that doesn't come up. They think in terms of how a guy projects and transitions to the league. You know, Now obviously, if the guy had to learn different systems from coaches who are respected, I'm sure that's a plus. But I think for the most part, coaches feel that they're going to get them in their building and they're going to coach them their way.
Eddie, they get more concerned. They want to know why. They understand NIL. They
Yeah.
get all that. They want to know from a mental standpoint or off the field, okay, if a guy transfers to 2 schools, they want to know the background. Was it off the field legal? Because teams have to know this stuff. They're going to know, by the way, through NFL security and their own security. They're always going to know.
Fast forward to now, modern day football. Was the defense more quarters with 2 high safeties? Is that the modern day style of defense?
The goal is really to prevent explosive plays in the pass game. That's really the goal. It's not that they don't want to stop the run, and who knows where the run game goes. This past year, there were more 300-yard rushers than there had been in years, and it's just a snapshot, a one-year snapshot, so we don't know where the run game is going here. But the point is teams started to really get a feel for how to attack and break down cover three. Same thing happened back in the 90s with cover two, when Tony Dungy and cover two were all the rage, and then offenses figured out how to attack it and break it down. And now you don't see cover two very much at all unless it's situation specific.
But what are 1 or 2 guys that you think of kind of the top tight end prospects that would fit best, you think, in the Eagles offense?
You're talking about the best tight end prospects. I mean, there's obviously the main guys, they're going to be gone by the Eagles by the time they draft because you got Warren and Loveland. Now it depends what you're looking for, because I think that Elijah Arroyo from the University of Miami, he's the true vertical dimension in this tight end class. Now Loveland he's like a big wide receiver, so he's really, really good, but he'll be gone. But Arroyo is the true vertical dimension, and I think he's just scratching the surface. Mason Taylor is a fascinating guy too, because again, I'm not at LSU's meetings, but I think there's so much more he could be at the NFL level. Yeah, he was not used that way at LSU, and again, that's up to them. But he was not used that much as an intermediate vertical guy. But I think he has those traits. Clearly, has those traits. Then you start really getting into guys. There's really no one else who is truly that kind of guy.
You feel it's a good class of edge rushers.
I think the poster child for that is Shamar Stewart. Shamar Stewart is 6'5". The weird thing was he at the Senior Bowl of the East West, I forget where he was.
Okay.
He weighed 281. Then at the combine, it was only 2 weeks later, he weighed 267. So obviously he and his advisors, whoever his agent said you should lose some weight. So he was 6'5", 267 at the combine, ridiculous arm length, ridiculous wingspan, ran a 4.59 vertical jumped 40. You watch tape of this guy is a total freak of an athlete. Total freak of an athlete.
Wow.
He has no idea how to rush the quarterback.
That's
Zero idea how to rush the quarterback. So now you're drafting a guy so now it gets down to what coaches' view of pass rush is. Sometimes you hear coaches say about a player at a given position, oh, he's just a natural at doing whatever it is the position requires. Can you teach a guy, we talked about Nolan Smith being taught, can you teach Shamar Stewart the nuances, the details, the subtleties of how to rush the quarterback?
I like the D tackles at the end of the first round. I think the guy at Ole Miss is at Ole Miss.
Walter Nolan, yeah.
He has plays at Ole Miss where he just ragdogged offensive lineman in the SEC where he looked like Jalen Carter. He's a power 3 technique. He's a different kind of player than Mason Graham. They're totally different kinds of players. Graham is explosive in a different kind of way, but Nolan is just country strong like Carter is.
What are some qualities you look for when you evaluate quarterbacks coming from college, whether it be footwork, processing? Like, what are some things that you look for?
I start right at the beginning with how they take the snap, how they hold the ball, their footwork. I try to get a real feel for what the route concepts are so I can get an understanding of what they're seeing. Then you try to get a feel for how the ball comes out of their hand. Can they throw it? What kind of throws are they being asked to make? One of the things I learned from a coach a number of years ago, and it's so true, you got to discount all the freaking screens. I mean, it's like when I hear, and this is no knock on Shedeur Sanders, by the way, but I'm just giving you an example. Shedeur Sanders threw 150 screens this year, and all I hear about people saying, oh, this guy completed 74% of his passes. He's super accurate. He threw 150 screens. We could throw those. I mean, that really has nothing to do with what he's going to do in the NFL. Now the only time you want to look at those is if he's throwing it behind a guy or over a guy's head. But if he's just throwing a screen, I mean, that doesn't help in your evaluation of a quarterback. What you try to get a feel for, and sometimes it's hard, is when is he throwing the ball? And the reason I say it's hard is sometimes you don't know if it's predetermination based on a play call or if it's true anticipation. So sometimes that's hard to differentiate because every coach, particularly in college, calls a play and they want the ball to go to the primary. It's true in the NFL too, but it's harder in the NFL. But so is he making a throw based on the fact that, hey, that's the play call and he's just throwing it to that guy and it looks really good? Or is he throwing it to that guy, just because, hey, that's the play call and he's going to throw it to him no matter what? So sometimes that's hard to tell the difference between predetermination and anticipation. But you got to start from the beginning. You got to see, does the guy step into his throws? What is he seeing? Is he throwing with a sense of timing? Because the bottom line is there's not 1,000 routes, guys. So, I know what the routes are. So, you got to see, when is he going to throw the football?